I would say, just last question, who picked this company? Because President Trump, a few months ago, in a New York Times article said, I have a guy who's unbelievable at doing swimming pools. He looked at it, he called me up, he said, sir, we can do something on it. Last night, he posted on Truth Social, also, I did not give out the contract, Interior did, to a contractor I did not know and have never used before. So Interior, he's talking about you. Did you give this $13 million no-bid contract to this company that's never done business with the federal government before?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I think the Secretary could answer the question.
The gentleman that you're talking about that has done construction work regarding pools and fountains for President Trump is not part of this contract. He's just a citizen that cared about it and offered some free advice. There's nothing there in terms of any dollars flowing to anybody that worked for President Trump.
Who picked this company? That's what I'm getting at.
$13 million of your hard-earned tax dollars, an entirely uncompetitive, no-bid contract, and free advice courtesy of the former president's private pool contractor. You simply couldn't write a script this absurd. Welcome back. Today, we're breaking down one of the most precise, high-stakes, and eye-opening congressional hearings of the year. We're watching Representative Joe Neguse deploy a stack of undeniable receipts to trap Interior Secretary Doug Burgum with no way out. In the realm of D.C. politics, you have routine inquiries, and then you have interrogations engineered like a deadly trap. Joe Neguse's background as a litigator is on full display here. He cuts straight to the chase and never poses a question without already holding the answer. During this 5-minute masterclass, he lays bare how a colossal public works project gets silently handed over via backdoor agreements, all shielded by the weak excuse of a national emergency. We'll dissect this confrontation piece by piece, examining Neguse's psychological maneuvering, the legal technicalities Burgum attempts to exploit, and the final piece of evidence that destroys the Secretary's entire defense. Make sure to hit subscribe, and let's get into the facts. Before he drops the massive $13 million revelation, we have to look at how Neguse constructs his trap. Expert litigators don't launch their finishing blow immediately. They throw the witness off balance first. Neguse begins his allotted time discussing Colorado wildfires, a safe, bipartisan topic that gets Burgum to lower his defenses. Instantly, Neguse shifts gears to a deeply polarizing move, and the Interior Department pulled last December, stripping Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth from the National Park's fee-free calendar. Notice how Neguse leverages this to paint a picture of an agency prone to making shady, behind-the-scenes administrative choices.
Okay. I believe those 2 days, by the way, are Martin Luther King Day, as you know, and Juneteenth. It's my view that Juneteenth provides all citizens with an opportunity to really recommit ourselves, renew our commitment to equality. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess part of my confusion about why, given your agreement on that front, given the fact that as governor, you proclaimed Juneteenth back in North Dakota several years ago, why you would now allow the agency, or I presume you were involved in that decision, to remove those 2 holidays from the list. It just strikes me that that is not consistent with the view that you just articulated. And I would urge the National Park Service to reverse that decision.
Did you catch Neguse's maneuver there? He just backed Burgum into an inescapable corner by highlighting Burgum's prior endorsement of Juneteenth during his time as governor. He makes the Secretary choose between confessing to hypocrisy or blaming faceless bureaucrats. Burgum stumbles, offering weak rationalizations about shifting free admission to the summer. But the trap has already snapped. Neguse has perfectly positioned the Interior Department as a body executing dubious, unjustified policy shifts, with the Secretary entirely knocked off his rhythm. Neguse finally unleashes the financial evidence. Now that Burgum is scrambling to defend park fee policies, Neguse introduces a company name that any Interior Secretary ought to recognize, especially since his agency just gifted them a fortune. Pay close attention to Burgum's physical discomfort and his dodging responses. How is it possible for a cabinet-level official to authorize a $13 million uncompetitive contract and legitimately have no clue who the contractor is?
Are you familiar with Atlantic Industrial Coatings?
I'm not familiar with that.
So Atlantic Industrial Coatings is
you're saying
company. Are you familiar with that company?
You're saying Atlantic?
Atlantic Industrial Coatings, correct. Are you familiar with it, or?
I'm not familiar with Atlantic.
Okay, Atlantic Industrial Coatings is the company that received a no-bid federal contract for the project at the Lincoln Memorial Reflective Pool. Are you familiar with that now? Is that,
I'm familiar with that project, yes.
but not the company?
I wasn't familiar with that specific name of the company.
This exchange is absolutely brutal. Atlantic Industrial Coatings. Burgum attempts to hide behind semantics, claiming he recognizes the project but not the corporate entity. Consider the magnitude of what we're talking about here. We aren't discussing a minor grant to repair a local playground. This is $13 million directed at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, arguably one of America's most recognizable and historic landmarks. It's the very site of the "I Have a Dream" speech. Yet, the government awarded an exclusive contract to a firm the secretary cannot even identify. When Neguse highlights the lack of a bidding process, Burgum gets incredibly defensive, accusing the representative of framing it as nefarious. Frankly, Mr. Secretary, when eight-figure deals dodge public oversight, nefarious is precisely the term the American people will use. The moment Burgum feigns ignorance about the company, the jaws of the trap close completely. Neguse doesn't rely on subjective arguments. He cites the actual Federal Acquisition Regulation, FAR, manual. For context, federal law mandates that government contracts undergo an open, competitive bidding process. This is designed to block monopolies, secure taxpayer value, and prevent officials from handing out lucrative favors to well-connected allies. The sole loophole is FAR 6.3022, which permits exceptions for unusual and compelling urgency. The statute explicitly dictates that skipping the bid phase is only permitted if any delay would cause serious injury to the government. Typically, this applies to active military crises, natural disasters, or failing power grids. Let's listen to what the government claims justified this $13 million closed-door agreement.
Okay, then
I reject
explain
that
it to me.
thesis.
Here, I'll ask you the question. My understanding of the federal procurement rules is that a no-bid contract is reserved for situations where, quote, any delay would cause serious injury to the government. What is your proposition is what? That there'd be serious injury to the government if this company didn't get the $13 million contract to do this particular project right now? Is that
Well, I think we do have a sense of urgency. I mean, we got handed a record amount of deferred maintenance. We had 19 fountains across the city that didn't work,
that's
82
the
homeless
serious
sites.
injury to
1,000
the government? The serious injury to the government?
Well, I suppose a lawyer could decide that, but I think that maybe all of us could agree that we would want to have our nation's capital looking great for the 250th. I mean, this is a common sense decision.
Having our nation's capital looking great for the 250th and 19 fountains that don't work. That represents the Interior Department's literal threshold for serious injury to the government. Let that sink in. They circumvented federal anti-corruption protocols, eliminated all market competition, and wired $13 million to one specific business because they wanted a nice aesthetic for an upcoming celebration, implying that no other contractor in the country was capable of repairing a water feature. This is a glaring example of administrative overreach. They have stretched the statutory meaning of urgency until it snapped. However, Neguse is fully aware of the actual motive behind bypassing the public bid. And it isn't about America's 250th birthday, it's entirely about who made the phone call. Neguse refuses to let Burgum slide by with vague talking points regarding deferred maintenance. Instead, he reveals the ultimate trump card, Donald Trump's direct quotes to the New York Times and his personal posts on Truth Social. This is the exact second the facade shatters. Neguse illustrates an irrefutable timeline. The former president boasts about knowing a guy who's unbelievable at doing swimming pools. That individual inspects the Lincoln Memorial. A phone call takes place. Suddenly, an obscure contractor with zero history of federal work is handed a $13 million VIP pass to taxpayer funds. Once Neguse directly confronts the secretary about the involvement of this presidential pool expert, Burgum's composure collapses into a staggering, defensive word salad.
Last night, he posted on Truth Social, also, I did not give out the contract, Interior did, to a contractor I did not know and have never used before. So Interior, he's talking about you. Did you give this $13 million no-bid contract to this company that's never done business with the federal government before?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I think the secretary can answer the question.
The gentleman that you're talking about that has done construction work regarding pools and fountains for President Trump is not part of this contract. He's just a citizen that cared about it and offered some free advice. There's nothing there in terms of any dollars flowing to anybody that worked for President Trump.
Who picked this company? That's what I'm getting at.
The National Park Service and the leaders on the National Mall are the ones that picked it. They went through the process, picked the person that was best, and part of their selection process was picking somebody who had the capability to complete the project in a time frame and in a budget that would actually fix the problem. I mean, there are past presidents that have worked on this thing. It's been shut for 2 years. Read the article. There was $38 million spent on this between 2010 and 2012, and it was never fixed.
He's just a citizen that cared about it and offered some free advice. Are we really supposed to swallow that coincidence? The former president mentions his fantastic swimming pool guy, and almost magically, an unrecognizable entity secures a $3 million monopoly contract to overhaul that very same pool. All while the cabinet official leading the initiative is stuttering, unable to recall the name of the firm he hired. This scenario highlights exactly why open procurement laws are fundamental. They don't exist to arbitrarily delay construction. They are designed to stop public officials from treating the Treasury like a personal slush fund for well-connected insiders. Neguse executed his oversight duties flawlessly in this hearing, rejecting evasive political spin and settling for nothing less than the facts. So, how do you view this $13 million deal? Is it a common-sense move born of necessity or a blatant display of cronyism? Let me know your perspective in the comments section, and stay tuned for the next political deep dive.
Shockwaves through the heart of Washington. Donald Trump has just axed his own hand-picked Attorney General, Pam Bondi. To the general public, this is a massive surprise. But for those closely scrutinizing the dark corners of the Jeffrey Epstein mega scandal, this is a cold-blooded and highly calculated move. Why would a loyal subordinate who turned a blind eye to the Constitution and buried millions of pages of Epstein documents to protect her boss suddenly be offered up as a sacrificial lamb? Congressman Jamie Raskin just went on national television to tear down the veil of secrecy behind this decision. He exposes everything from her role as a fall guy to the plot to dodge the April 14th congressional hearing, to the transformation of the Justice Department into a vendetta factory targeting political rivals. And you absolutely must watch until the end, because the identity of the person taking over Pam Bondi's seat of power will show you exactly how brazenly the Epstein cover-up campaign is being orchestrated. Hit subscribe right now, and let's uncover the truth together.
First, just what's your reaction to the news that Trump ousted as Attorney General?
Well, I'm afraid that the administration or the president may take the wrong message from this. I mean, her tenure was plainly a disaster, but she did everything that Donald Trump asked her to do. They sacked dozens and dozens of career attorneys just for having worked on the January 6th case. They did everything they could to obstruct the release of the Epstein files. Millions of pages of the Epstein files were withheld by Pam Bondi. They did nothing to try to crack down on the outrageous ICE tactics that were trampling people's civil rights and constitutional liberties in Minneapolis. And so she basically did everything that he asked her to do, and she shouldn't be just the fall person for a series of policies that I think are profoundly infected with unconstitutionality. And
breaking news shaking up American politics. Donald Trump just abruptly axed his own appointee, firing Attorney General Pam Bondi. For the mainstream media, this is a shock. But for anyone closely following the Jeffrey Epstein scandal of the century, this is a highly calculated and incredibly ruthless move. Why would someone who obediently turned a blind eye to the Constitution and suppressed millions of pages of Epstein files to protect the president suddenly get kicked to the curb? Congressman Jamie Raskin just went on national television and exposed the entire dark truth behind this decision. From the paradox of the fall person, the plot to dodge the April 14th subpoena, to a vendetta factory targeting political rivals. And make sure to watch until the end, because the twist regarding the identity of Pam Bondi's replacement will show you just how terrifying the Epstein cover-up campaign truly is. Hit subscribe right now, and let's go find the truth.
I wonder, Congressman, what you make of the timing, in part because it was only yesterday that Bondi had summoned the head prosecutor overseeing an investigation into whether former CIA Director John Brennan made false statements to Congress about a years-old intel assessment of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Our reporting indicates that Bondi was trying to communicate to that prosecutor that she believed that he was slow-walking that investigation and that she wanted to see some development in the case. Do you think that the fact that she's been fired makes it more likely that we'll see similar prosecutions in the near future?
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. She turned the Department of Justice into Donald Trump's vendetta factory. And, whether we're talking about, the FBI director, Comey, or we're talking about the New York prosecutor, Letitia James, or we're talking about members of Congress like Maggie Goodlander. They thought that their job was basically to go out and investigate and prosecute Donald Trump's chosen foes, regardless of whether or not they've done anything. And that's why, there's a record number of judges just castigating and excoriating the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, and these lawyers for their absolute improper behavior in court and outside of court. And I hope that Donald Trump doesn't continue down this road. He'll just ruin some other lawyers' careers.
Raskin pointed out a cruel paradox of power. Blind loyalty does not guarantee your seat. Pam Bondi single-handedly tainted her own reputation to carry out dirty missions, especially covering up the Epstein files. But the moment she became a liability, she was instantly turned into the fault person. But what was the direct cause? The reporter raised suspicions about a shady event that occurred right before she was fired. The incident involving former CIA Director John Brennan. Listen to Raskin describe how the Department of Justice is being weaponized.
All the way down the road with the corruption administration, I think a career killer for a lot of people.
I wonder, Congressman, what you make of the timing, in part because it was only yesterday that Bondi had summoned the head prosecutor overseeing an investigation into whether former CIA Director John Brennan made false statements to Congress about a years-old intel assessment of Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Our reporting indicates that Bondi was trying to communicate to that prosecutor that she believed that he was slow-walking that investigation and that she wanted to see some development in the case. Do you think that the fact that she's been fired makes it more likely that we'll see similar prosecutions in the near future?
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. She turned the Department of Justice into Donald Trump's vendetta factory. And, whether we're talking about, the FBI director, Comey, or we're talking about the New York prosecutor, Letitia James, or we're talking about members of Congress like Maggie Goodlander. They thought that their job was basically to go out and investigate and prosecute Donald Trump's chosen foes, regardless of whether or not they've done anything. And that's why there's a record number of judges just castigating and excoriating the Department of Justice.
Bondi's 11th hour push to pressure the prosecutor in the Brennan probe makes it clear she was scrambling to prove her loyalty right before the axe fell. Yet, her ultimate dismissal delivers a terrifying implication. Even her extreme tactics weren't ruthless enough to satisfy this administration. However, the DOJ vendetta factory is only a fraction of the story. The administration's true nightmare is circled on the calendar for April 14th. Pam Bondi is under subpoena by the House Oversight Committee to answer for the Epstein scandal. Widespread reports suggest her sudden removal is nothing more than a calculated smokescreen to help her evade this exact testimony, a brazen cover-up that Jamie Raskin has completely dismantled, pointing the finger directly at GOP leaders.
But we are hearing indications from behind the scenes, including from CNN's Caitlin Collins, that part of the reason that Bondi is leaving the position is directly tied to the White House wanting to avoid her testifying before Congress. What do you make of that?
Well, a legal subpoena is a legal subpoena, and she has the responsibility and the duty to appear. It may be that Chairman Comer, in his utterly invertebrate subservience to Donald Trump administration, will see if he can get enough Republicans to vote to withdraw the subpoena. But I believe that my colleague, Ranking Member Garcia, is absolutely right. That subpoena is still valid, and she needs to appear.
What do you think the future is of the Epstein files investigation with Bondi now out of the picture?
Well, the president might be taking from all of this the idea that he needs a more skilled fighter on his behalf. But in fact, he should take it as a sign that the country has had enough of all of the obstructionism and all of the cover-up. We passed a law for a reason. We want every single one of those files released. We want only the names of victims redacted and not the names of the potential co-conspirators and enablers, which is what they've done. So we'll see whether they continue to dig even deeper in this betrayal of the federal law and justice. They've turned the Department of Justice into this the political law firm for Donald Trump. And
the hypocrisy is glaring. Congress explicitly mandated that only victims' names be blacked out for their safety. Instead, Pam Bondi's DOJ weaponized that law to shield Epstein's billionaire backers and elite co-conspirators. So who are they really working for? Her sudden firing isn't a punishment. It's a calculated legal smoke grenade designed to kill her congressional subpoena and bury those hidden names forever. But don't mistake her exit for a victory. The real gut punch is who they just installed to run the DOJ, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Is he stepping in to clean house, or is he a far bigger threat to Epstein's victims? Wait until you hear Raskin rip the mask off this new appointment.
Would you prefer Todd Blanche take on the role aside from an acting basis and be Bondi's official replacement, or perhaps your former House colleague Lee Zeldin or even Jeanine Pirro? Do any of those names resonate with you as potential replacements for Bondi?
no, they do not. All of them, again, are complete political sycophants and flunkies to Donald Trump. That was the problem in the first place. And so it's just asking another lawyer to walk the plank and sacrifice their professional reputation for Donald Trump. They should get in a real prosecutor, a real lawyer, and there are lots of good conservative ones. And a lot of them are the people who've stood up to Pam Bondi in this process, including Eric Siebert, the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, who was replaced. He would make
This is the ultimate smoking gun, exposing the staggering hypocrisy of this whole operation. If anyone believes Bondi was ousted for mishandling the Epstein files, handing the reins to Todd Blanche is a direct slap in the face of justice, ousting an AG who buried the evidence, only to promote the exact man who laid out the red carpet and secured a cozy VIP prison setup for Ghislaine Maxwell, the very mastermind of the trafficking ring. This is undeniable proof the White House never planned to expose those redacted names. Bondi didn't lose her job for failing her duties. She was eliminated because Congress was about to force her to spill the truth under oath. But this fight is far from finished. Jamie Raskin and the Democrats are standing firm. The subpoena holds its ground. Will Pam Bondi actually face the music on April 14th? Will the GOP establishment pull the plug on the subpoena to bail her out? And most importantly, who are the 6 elites still protected in the Epstein Black Book? Drop your take on Raskin's